Here we go. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending upon where you are in the country. Welcome again to week 2 of our JASPER training for this fall. My name is Joe Marconi. I'm here with Matt Lofton, Director of Coaching. The illustrious Matt Lofton, welcome. Good to see you again, Matt.
Yeah, good seeing you again too, Joe.
This is week 2, and it's all about our retaining top talent. Last week, we went through a lot of recruiting, a lot of Matt, just 1 second. You want to let everybody in if they're not in?
Yeah, they're all
Just
in.
check that for me. They're all in. Good. Excellent. So this is week 2. Last week, we spent a lot of time on why we should recruit, why it's important to continuously recruit, and also to look for top talent, the superstars. If you remember from last week, we made mention of that your success is really dependent upon the people you assemble around you. If you have mediocre people or you don't hire right, then you're not going to be successful. You can only bring your company up to a certain level. Without the right people, your business will plateau and eventually it'll decline as you try to scale and grow. So hiring the right people is job number 1. But it's not when your job is over. Your job actually begins when you hire someone. So today we're going to go through the steps, a lot about leadership, employee management. We're going to walk you through some challenging problems you may have in the workplace, and basically how to build a workplace that once you attract people to your company, you want them to retain. You want them to stay there. To have a revolving door is really very costly to the business. And we're going to go into some slides to show you how costly this could be to the business. So let's get going. Got a lot to cover. And again, welcome. And I want to just thank JASPER again for making the push to have us do this. Like I said last week too, and I'm going to probably mention a few more times next few weeks. When I was in business, I had multiple locations. I was a real big supporter of JASPER. I use them for engines and transmissions, and they really understand the relationship between the independents and what they do. So, and they try to do their best, and they do a great job at really anchoring the aftermarket in those independent shops to try to help them as best they can be successful. So thank you, JASPER, for doing this and putting this on. All right, so I just went through this. This is Matt Lofton, and my name is Joe Marconi. We're just happy to be here. We were League Worldwide. I'm a former shop owner. I had 3 locations. Now I do this full-time. I thought it was going to be a part-time job, but Matt had other ideas, right, Matt? He just dragged me in. But no, I love it. All kidding aside, I love it. It's really a give back to the industry, and if I can share my experiences that I encountered through the last, believe it or not, it's 50 years I've been in this industry. So it's a long time. It's a long time. Getting out of high school, and I just love this industry. And as long as they allow me to be here, I'm going to show my face and keep pushing. Is that a deal, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah. We'll have you as long as you want to be here, Joe.
Okay. Anyway, we do coaching, management training, and service advisor training, and we also have mastermind groups. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. So these are the 4 weeks. Last week, we had recruiting top technicians and service advisors. This week, all about retaining top talent. Remember what I said earlier? When you hire someone, your job isn't over. That's when your job begins. So we're going to talk about the workplace environment, employee management, and creating an environment that really tells people, we want you to stay. Right? And we're going to give you some tips on how to do that. Next week and the week after, week 3 and 4, is about pay plans. Part 1 is about how to create pay plans that attract top talent. And then part 2 is once you have those people and you design those pay plans, how can those pay plans evolve to retain and also to establish a career path for your top technicians and top service advisors. Matter of fact, for all your employees. Remember, the goal is to, as best as possible, recruit, but retain also. You're constantly looking for quality people. But once you have them, you want to do all you can to retain them. So please keep that in mind. You do not want a revolving door like like this slide shows. It's too costly. Employee turnover is just too costly. Onboarding costs, training costs, the loss of productivity, trying to get someone up to grade, it's very costly. It damages morale. It overwhelms people too, and you lose engagement from your employees when you have the revolving door. Customer experience also suffers a bit. If you have to replace service advisors every few months, you know what that is. We've all been down that road. So again, you want to smooth out these revolving door episodes and get people hired and then try to retain them as best as possible. Financial impact also. It's a major financial impact on the business to have to onboard somebody again, to have to train them, to get them on board. There's a ramping up time period where they have to, get acclimated to the way you do things, no matter how experienced they are. And obviously, if you have real growth plans, especially if they're aggressive growth plans, then this impedes that growth plan. So the cost of turnover is very high. So we want to try to eliminate it. Not that you can't eliminate it altogether. You'll always have turnover. We want to do what we can and the best job we can to reduce that turnover. Matt, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, and I think your bullet points here are spot on, Joe. I think that the only thing that I'd like to add to that is just the um, think about your process maturity. Every time you have to add a new employee on, you like you said, you go all the way back to square one and you're training the base level core processes of just how to do the base level functions of the job. So you never get an opportunity to continue to push those processes forward to grow the business, right? So if I'm constantly hiring a service advisor at the front and I have to retrain that person every single time just to how to answer the phone correctly, then I never get to overcoming objections and we never get to, pushing that customer experience forward and understanding how to do the little things that it takes to go from good to great because we're constantly focused on how to do the big portions of the job, that are just core tasks that have to get done. So, um, employee turnover is it's a huge issue. It's a huge cost savings. There's a lot of hidden costs in employee turnover. And then also you think about the cost of employee recruiting right now, of what you're having to
Yeah.
pay to just try to bring in a new employee, whether it's the advertising, whether you're paying a sign-on bonus, all these other things that we're having to do now just to recruit top talent. So retention is by far the best, your best strategy for acquisition is to make sure that you don't really need to acquire anybody. So if you have good talent, you have the ability to hold on to them, pay attention to today and try to take some of the things we're going to talk about today and implement them because anything you can do to retain talent is going to continue to not just help the business move forward, but it's also going to reduce a lot of expenses that you have in the business as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. All great points, Matt. And would you say we can make the analogy of uh, customer turnover? Same thing, right? Look how costly that is. So, a lot of what we're going to see today is about the employee experience. It actually holds true with the customer experience. So you don't want a lot of customer turnover too. When you spend all that money for a customer, spend all that money for a employee, you really want to do all you can to retain those people because again, like you said, the cost is just too high. It's just way too high. Okay, so surveys were done, Glassdoor, Gallup, and other surveys were done. And this is kind of a rundown of what the superstars are looking for. Remember, you want the best of the best. And once you have that, once you spent your due diligence, your time, your hard-earned money on getting these people, again, like I'm going to repeat it again, your job is not over. It's when your job begins. But this is what they're looking for: ethical workplace, a strong culture, competitive pay plans with benefit. All right, we're going to talk about that in a little bit later on, and we're really going to hammer that home next week and the week after about pay plans, how important they are. Not that it's all about money. It's a lot more. And you will see that we're going to come full circle here. It's not all about money. But you need to have a basic pay plan that satisfies the basic needs of life. I'm going to get to that in just a few slides down. So remember that. Career pathing, opportunities. Superstars do not look for a job. They look for opportunity. They want to know that, do I have a career here? Do I have a place that I can come to work for with a good good culture, quality people, systems, processes to give me the opportunity to grow, that opportunity to keep on moving myself upward. That's a big deal. Well-equipped facility, very, very important too. Especially look at technicians. What frustrates so many technicians is given a job and then they don't have the tools or the equipment or the information systems to do those jobs properly. So that's important too. Strong brand with a great reputation in the community. Very, very important. Let me tell you why that's important. Let's go back to recruiting. When you have a disgruntled technician, service advisor working somewhere, whether it's a dealership or another aftermarket competitor, that person, if it's a superstar person, they're going to create their short list. What I mean by that is they're going to start Googling in their area or doing their research and looking at your business. All right. And they're going to start seeing your reviews. What is your reputation in the community? They're going to go on your website. They're going to try to find out all they can. So you want to create an environment, again, great reputation, great reviews, the well-equipped facility, like I said earlier. You want to do all you can to have that place attractive because this is what they're looking for. So again, we're talking about that whole process of not just attracting but retaining them. Work-life balance is very, very important too. It's so important. Family is first. We always say that family is first. So we have to understand that there's a work-life balance there. Leadership, leadership is more important now than ever before. Top level people want to know that the leader, the company manager or the shop owner has a vision for the future. All right, that's what leadership is all about. Well, one of the things that leadership is prominent. Talking about great leaders is the fact that they have vision. And obviously, pride, purpose, meaning. Why do people get up in the morning and go to work? Find that out. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to talk about motivation. But people want to have pride for their job, where they work. They want to know that their purpose is aligned with the values and purpose of where they work. So this is all important. This is what the stars are looking for. Matt, did I forget anything?
No, you didn't forget anything. There's a really good question here from Darren in the chat, and I figured this would be a good spot to answer this question. But what Darren said is employees play a big role in retaining and losing customers as well. Sometimes you lose an employee and the customers follow the employee, and sometimes you keep an employee and you lose customers because of that employee.
Yeah.
And so he asked, what's a good way to keep a finger on the pulse of this? So we know what's going on. That's a really, really good question because that's a difficult thing to do because there's no direct metric that you're going to have that's going to track whether you have an employee that's you know if you lose an employee, whether they're going to take them with you or whether the customer's loyal to you as the brand or whether they're loyal to the employee, or whether you have an employee that's running people off. So I think and we're going to talk about this in some of the other slides, about some of the management by walking around and just paying attention to what's going on and what that customer interaction looks like. Um, but also, as far as, the keeping those employees there, the retention, which is what we're doing here today. Anytime you have service advisor turnover, you're going to lose some customers because of that. It just is what it is. People get familiar seeing a familiar face. When they don't see that familiar face there, they're going to leave. But I think the more tricky part of that question is, how do you know if you have an employee that's actively running customers off, right? And that's where you create an entire culture based on the customer experience and you knowing exactly what that customer experience is and reaching out and getting feedback, doing follow-up calls and asking the customer, how their experience was, making sure we're sending out post-service, thank you cards and asking for feedback in those thank you cards, making sure that we're sending a post-service follow-up text message and asking how their service was at that post follow-up text message. Even going as far as doing like secret shoppers, just and giving them a survey to fill out to see what the experience was and if there was anything that they didn't like in the experience. But that's a really good point. That's really hard to
Yeah.
put a thumb on, but it does happen. And if you do have the wrong person there, just like we want to make we talked about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus.
Yeah.
Retention is important, but if you have the wrong person, we need to make sure that we get them out so we can retain the right person. That's a great point, Darren.
Yeah, I think you answered it well and you covered all the bases. I just want to piggyback on one thing you said, Matt, and this is Dennis. You said, I'm Darren. Ask the question. Okay. It all starts with the right people, right? It really does. Without the right people, nothing is going to work that we're going to present to you over the next hour or so. So it has to start with the right people. And then obviously strong leadership, building relationships is important, the right culture, always having the respect for people and always promoting integrity. So, but the fact is that these things will happen. If you're in business long enough, you're going to experience things that you never imagined. I was in business 41 years, and trust me, I tried to do all the right things, but sometimes you just can't help it. In the old philosophers back thousands of years ago, they had many different principles, and one of them was, it's simple, control what you can control. There's some things you can't. All right. So we're going to go through a lot of steps here that address that very principle of controlling what you can control. And then that's all you can ask for sometimes. That's a great point and a great question. All right, so this is a basic strategy, and I got this from a book called Good Job Strategy. And the Good Job Strategy, I forget the guy, I forget the author of the book, but it's all about certain companies like Costco, Progressive Insurance, um, a few others. I can't remember now. A few other companies that really are they're very employee focused, employee centric, and they hire the right people. They pay them well. They look to enhance their careers through career pathing, and comes out of that book of good job strategy. You have to hire the right people first, and we've been saying this for years. I learned this. I learned that years ago reading a book on Good to Great by Jim Collins, written about, oh, it's got to be 20 years now. And he said, you got to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus. And once you have the right people, you got to put them in the right seats. So it all starts with having the right people, having those clear expectations and empower them. That means giving them the opportunity to spread their wings, opportunity to make decisions, to be part of the process. But you don't want them blindly complying to your wishes. You want them being part of the team. So that's number one. You have to pay above market wages. And we're going to get into this more next week and the week after. But, aside from entry level positions, I get that. But people need to know that they going home with on an average weekly basis with a pay scale that takes care of the basic needs of life, that they're putting food on the table. And we're going to get into this a little bit more detail. I don't want to spoil the next couple of slides, but you have to pay above market wages and a great benefits package. I know it's costly, and I know a lot of you are saying, but how can I afford that? Well, we coach people through that. And you don't have to have the best. I'm not saying that, but you have to start thinking about what you can offer your people, because you want to prevent them from looking over the fence for greener grass. You really do. The onboarding process has to be very extensive with a lot of initial training. All right. A lot of the training that's required in your shops today should be training on all the checklists, SOPs, the multi-point process, the phone process, the intake customer process, the car delivery process, the how to road test the vehicle, how to go through a check engine light. Every business is like a fingerprint. There's no two alike. So your specific SOPs, standard operating procedures, and checklists are specific to your company. That should be part of your onboarding process. That's the foundation. If you want to hold people to you and build a strong foundation, take the time in the beginning, because you have to focus on the customer, number one, the customer history, the company history, your culture, and all those internal standard operating procedures. Build that foundation. It's like building a house. The stronger the foundation, stronger the house. And obviously, the retention strategy has to include career paths with continuous employee development. This is a theme you're going to repeat it a few times down the road in this presentation. So, and next week too. So career pathing is very important. You're not hiring for today. We hear it all over the internet. We hear it all over the podcasts. We read it about it in trade magazines, on social media. One of the biggest pain points for shop owners is, where do I find good people? Find good people. Well, that's the problem. It really is. So you're going to spend a lot of time finding good people. And once you find them, you got to keep them. You got to do all you can to try to keep them. So career pathing is one of those strategies that I want you to think about. And obviously, again, it's not a typo. It's there by design. You need to provide world-class leadership. Matt, what do you got to say? Please add.
Yeah, so I mean, I think again, Joe, you hit on everything pretty good right there. I think probably the one thing that's really missed out on this from from the ownership standpoint is the career paths and the continuous employee development. When we talk about a lot of the people that I interview today, when we sit down and we talk, really why they're leaving is they feel like they're capped out where they're at. And I'm talking about the higher level people, right? Not just your base level entry employees. They just feel like they've capped out where they are and they're looking for an opportunity to continue to push and grow their career. And this is a challenging industry to create a career path, right? Because I mean, if you hire a service advisor, what is the career path for a single store service advisor? Um, and so just because there's not necessarily a positional career path, that's why we have next week and the week after, like Joe talked about, there needs to be a pay plan and performance career path put in place. For technicians, if you are bringing in that entry level individual, it's a little bit easier to, kind of put together a career path for them. What does it take to get from a lube tech to a general service technician, a general service technician to a C tech, B tech, A tech? What does that look like? But I feel like if we can put more thought into that, well, that's a big portion of the retention piece because once people get stale inside of their position and they feel like they've maxed out and they can't go any further, they start looking for greener pastures.
Yeah, it's a great point. Unbelievable. So true, Matt. So true. Okay, so how do you create a healthy workplace? All right. So, number one, you have to understand the needs of the individual. It's not about you. Shop owners, managers out there, it's not about you. Yeah, your needs do matter. I shouldn't dismiss them like that, but you have to understand a leader gets to know their people, gets to know the individual. If you can align what their needs are to the needs of the company, that's one powerful strategy. That's why when you sit down we're going to go through this a little bit. When you sit down and have these reviews with one-on-one reviews with your employees, you really want to find what drives them, what motivates them, because what you think motivates them may not be what really motivates them. Management by walking around, MBWA. That was a term that was written in a book from the early 80s called In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters. And what that means is the managers and shop owners need to get out of their office and get out of their world and go into the trenches, whether it's in the shop environment, whether it's in the service counter, wherever, and talk to people, find out about them, start building relationships with them, ask them what they're doing this weekend, what they did last weekend, get to know everybody as an individual. That's very, very important. The other term is called Gemba. Gemba is a term from the Japanese. And that means to gather critical data from the trenches. In other words, the people who run the daily work, whether it's sales, whether it's writing service, whether it's the technicians in the shop repairing, servicing vehicles, they know what's going on. And if they're superstars, they can give you a lot of real-time data that's critical. What this does is not only help you as a shop owner get a lot of good knowledge about what's going on in the trenches, but it makes them feel important. Again, we're talking about retention here, employee retention. If you can make people feel important and they believe that you're interested in what they think and their perceptions of how to improve things, you're gonna begin to anchor them to your business. Celebrating wins, celebrate wins. Try to find, we think too negative at times. We look for things that go wrong. Turn that around. Celebrate when things go right. All right. Try to dismiss the negativity and bump up your positivity. Here's a tip for you. If you always think negative, things are going to go wrong. They went wrong today. They're going to go wrong tomorrow. You're really allowing your brain not to allow good, positive energy to enter it. And that'll hurt you in the long run. So celebrate wins. Look for things to celebrate. Always promote the team concept. I think that's a given. Everybody here understands that how important team concept is. As a leader, always communicate your vision, your company mission, and the why we do things. Again, I go back to the leadership component of this. Superstars want to know that the leader of the company has vision, that you're going somewhere. They don't want a job, they want a career. So if you have vision, yes, we have 4 bays today, we're gonna add another bay on, or we're gonna increase business, we're gonna buy an alignment machine, we're gonna open up location number 2 or 3, or we're going to go to we're going to sell this location or move to a bigger whatever it is. You've got to have vision. You know the old expression, company that's not growing is dying. Well, that's true. So you always want to grow. And let me tell you something too. Your growth path is different from any other growth path. I don't care what the other person's doing. You have to decide for yourself as a leader of your company where your business is going. You decide. But once you decide, have that vision, communicate it. The people around you will rally around it if you include them in on it. Again, we're talking about retention, how to keep these people with you. And obviously, you need to commit to the development of others. All right. People, superstars, I should say, they want to be taken care of in a way that you want to train them, empower them, and you care about their personal development. As they develop and get better, your company develops and gets better. What do you think, Matt?
Yes, I want to go back to, your emphasis that you were putting on celebrating wins and why that's so important. And Joe, you know me, I'm a big sports guy. And so in college football, Nick Saban is widely considered the greatest football coach of all time.
Yep.
And I was watching an interview that he did one time, and he said, he would never discipline his team after a loss. In other words, after a loss, he would never come into the locker room and yell and scream and focus on what was negative because he knew that in that moment, they knew that they had already failed. So there was no reason to harp on the failure. What he would do is he would love them in a loss, and then he would try to be strict during a win. Because if you had a series of wins together, that it's more difficult to keep your focus when things are going well because you get relaxed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what he said he would do is on Monday when they would come in and watch film, instead of watching all the bad plays that they did in the game that they lost, they would pick 1 or 2 things that they highlighted that were factors of why they lost to show it. But then they would show all the good things all the times that they had done it right in other games so that that player didn't lose the confidence. Right. So what happens is if, like Joe said, it's really easy to sit there and find, what that a team member is doing wrong. And if we consistently pull that out and we focus on that all the time, we wind up eroding away at that individual's confidence. So, if you can find, if you think about training a dog, we don't train the dog to sit by smacking it every single time it doesn't sit. We train the dog by praising it when it does sit and giving it a treat. So, we need to be able to find and celebrate those wins as well. When you have a team member that does fall short of the standard, we highlight that. It's also good to come back and say, hey, here's 2 other times that you did it perfect. So I know you can do it. You know you
Yeah.
can do it. And just be able to celebrate those wins as well. So I think that's really important. If we think about employee retention, another reason that people leave is again they feel like they've gotten either they lose the confidence in the job and it snowballs into their performance, or they feel like they're being micromanaged, or they feel like there's just a negative connotation to everything coming from management.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes back to this right here.
Yeah, it's a great point. Unbelievable. You're so true about that. And it is true. Nick Saban is a great coach, and he knows that. He knows that process, why bring it up? Why harp on the fact that they lost? Try to find reasons to build upon that loss for the next time. Okay, so motivation. We're going to jump to motivation now. This is a big topic. They say that some people are self-motivated. Others say that it's very difficult to motivate people. There are self-motivated people, but the most self-motivated people in the world can be demotivated, or actually they can go backwards in the wrong environments. So motivation is very, very important. Again, everything starts and ends with having the right people. this slide here is showing you it's called the hierarchy of needs, and it was developed by Abraham Maslow in the early, I think it was 1920s. I'm not really sure, but he wrote about and he studied human nature. And he said that human beings have to feel that they're being taken care of. Number one, that the basic needs of life, the physical needs, way in the bottom, have to be met before any other step is accomplished. In other words, they can't really be satisfied or think about any personal growth or being part of a team or group without satisfying the basic needs of life: air, water, shelter, comfort. And then as you satisfy these basic needs, they can move up in this hierarchy: safety and social, self-esteem. The ultimate goal here is to get people to really have that self-actualization, that self-motivation, where people are doing things because they want to do it, not because they're being told to do it. That's the ultimate goal. So it's a short book if you ever want to read Hierarchy of Needs. And what I did was I made some parallels to our automotive industry. So number one, physical needs, right? You have to have fair wages, reasonable hours, sharp tools, and the ability to support family. In other words, you can't expect an individual to be a team player, to really to really stretch themselves to perform in a way that benefits the company without them being very, very comfortable and satisfied that their paycheck, their basic needs are being met every single week, provide for their families, put food on the table, pay the rent or mortgage. You can't go upward unless these basic needs are met. And we have job safety needs, job security, safe workplace, benefits. So in other words, we're building a kind of like a pay plan or a culture that supports the basic needs of being human. Then we have team environments, all right? Culture, relationships. Again, you can't expect an individual to be a team player without the first two, those bottom parts of that pyramid are met. Those requirements are met. That criteria is critical in order to get a well running machine in terms of team spirit. Then once you have these in place, these components in place, then we can achieve higher levels. You really want to get to the top two levels of self-esteem and self-actualization, which is personal growth, fulfillment. You want to get to the point where people are giving back, they're helping others. In other words, the technicians are working in unison. There's the advisors, the managers, everybody's working as a team to support each other, help each other succeed. But if the bottom, especially the bottom two, the safety needs and physical needs of the individual are not met and not satisfied, and that's where we go wrong sometimes. If they're not satisfied, you can't build that team culture. So to give a real good example, I don't want to give away next week and the week after, but if the technician is really struggling, it's on flat rate. I'm not going to go into this today, but it was on flat rate and is really struggling for a number of reasons. And that swing in pay is up and down, up and down, up and down. And then the wife is home or the husband's home, and they're saying, what's going on here? Well, we have to have more steady paycheck. If they're worried about their pay, if they're worried about their basic needs of life, water, shelter, comfort, putting food on the table, then you can't expect them to be a team play and perform. They're just there's too much stress and being overwhelmed and within them to be able to sustain this. So very, very important slide. And please, you're going to get a copy of these slides anyway. I think it's a good idea to go back and study this one slide. Matt, what do you got to add?
Yeah, so I mean I think the one that sticks out for me on this one is the social needs and your attachment that you have to our industry here as far as the team environment, culture, and relationships, because it really drives everything past that. Like I said, the first two are kind of foundational core things that just need to be in place, right?
Yeah.
But what really drives the success of the organization is going to be, those social needs inside of there and the team environment and the culture. There's a lot of talk about culture, and culture plays a huge part in employee retention, and it also plays a huge part in the customer experience as well. but a lot of people kind of are misguided on what culture is. Culture is not what you put on posters on the wall. Culture is the culmination of the values of the people that make up the business and that make up the team, right? And so if you have an idea of what the culture is supposed to be and you hire the wrong people that don't share those values, or everybody on your team has opposing values, even though they have the right skill set to be able to get the job done, you don't have people that are culture adjacent, you're going to have a lot of internal turmoil and you're not going to have a good team environment, because you're going to have Joe over here that's focused on the team and creating a good experience for the customer. And then you're going to have Matt over here that all he cares about is turning as many hours as he can turn. There's nothing really wrong with either one of those. It just depends on whether it fits inside of the culture of the business or not, right? But if you have those people at odds with each other, there's no way to have a cohesive culture. And if you don't have a cohesive culture, then you're going to have turnover. You're going to lose employees because you're going to have people that just don't fit, right? And whether it takes you 6 months to realize it or whether it takes them 6 weeks to realize it, one of the two of you is not going to be happy with you there, right?
Oh, true. Excellent, excellent, excellent. You're so true. In other words, you want to walk up this pyramid, walk up this ladder, and the bottom two are foundational. But I would say you're right, man. I agree with you. To get to that team environment, and then from there, you can't get to the top levels until that you anchor that team environment aspect too. Okay, so motivation in the workplace. Continue. I have a few more slides on this. The behavior you get is the behavior you reward. This goes back to what I said earlier. With two, that technician or that service advisor comes in late. All right, it's Monday morning. For some reason, the technician comes in late, and you get on the technician. You pull them aside. You got to come in early. You got to come in early. You explain to them the reasons why. All right. Now, for the next 2 weeks, they come in on time. You don't say a word. Right? You don't say a word. 3 weeks down the road, the technician comes in late again. Then you get on that technician. So what you did was you didn't reinforce any of the good behavior. You actually reinforced the bad behavior. If you think about it, if you're going to hold someone accountable, you've got to also point out when they're doing the job the way that's expected of them. So behavior you get is behavior you reward. Be very, very careful. All right. Like Matt said earlier, you don't smack that dog if you smack the dog, smack the dog. It's really not the best way to motivate people. Money's not the best motivator either. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. They need to have a good pay plan. All right. And I'm not talking about entry level people coming out of tech school at the age of 19, 18. That's different. I'm talking about people in the workplace that are seasoned. They have 10, 15 years in the business. They are qualified. You just hired a group of superstars. All right. These are good people around you. Money has to be a factor. They have to be satisfied. It's not the best motivator. We all know people that leave their job, who have left their job because of what? And they went to another job for less money because they left their job. They didn't leave their career or their actual job of what they do. They left who they work for. They left the environment. They left the toxic workplace. They left the bad manager, the bad shop owner, right? So be very, very careful about using money as a motivator. That's not the best. Fear is a bad motivator. It'll make you do things, but it's not a good motivator for long-term success. We all know about that. I make this analogy everywhere in every presentation. Little Johnny, he's 12 years old. He's going up to bat, and the team is losing in Little League. And the coach yells out, "Now, Johnny, the one thing I don't want you to do is strike out, because if you strike out, I'm going to bench you. Johnny, do not strike out." Johnny gets up there with his bat. What does he do? He strikes out. He's filled with fear. Why does he strike out? Because, like Matt said earlier, you just put into his brain all the negative things about striking out. He's now visualizing striking out. Little Johnny's a good ball player. He practices with his father. He goes to the batting cage. He knows how to hit. What the coach should have done was say, "Now you can make this hit. Just connect with the ball. Do what you've always done. Johnny, just go up there, have fun, swing away, connect, hit that." You're planting good motivators into his brain, positive motivators into his brain. So very, very careful about fear. Use setbacks as opportunity, not as failure. If you have the right person in working for you, they're going to make mistakes. There's no one in this room And I challenge you. Everyone in this room has made a mistake, right? Everyone, we all make mistakes. We're human. So please use setbacks, mistakes as opportunity. Sometimes we learn a lot more from making a mistake than whatever we do. So it's important that you use it as a learning opportunity. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so Joe, there's a great book out there called Carrots and Sticks. And Carrots and Sticks kind of highlights the generational differences between um, what our pay plans and motivators used to be, and then kind of what they've how the human has evolved in the workplace
Go,
over
Matt.
the last 100 200 years since the Industrial Revolution. But it is a great book. It talks a lot about how what Joe said there is that money and fear are really just not good motivators. They just don't get it done. Money is important. It needs to take away the need because there's a need for money. We need to allow that to happen. So it is a reason that people leave. They you gotta we can't deny that. However, um, the we need to try to find those intrinsic values that really drive people, and people want autonomy. They want to be able to have control over their own you know have control over their own work environment, have control over their own future and their performance. They want feedback. They want a growth plan. They want to develop. So I mean those are a lot of the bigger motivators. They want to do the type of work that they enjoy doing.
Yeah,
And that
so true.
makes a big difference as well. So, um, and then fear, I mean, there's different, there's a time for fear, and there's nothing wrong with a fear of failure. But we don't need to lead with fear. Fear is a terrible leading tactic. It just doesn't work. And eventually, what you create there is you create that hub and spoke model that we talk about so much, where nobody does anything without checking in with the hub, and because they're too scared to make decisions. And if you have one of those environments where everybody's stopping and coming to you and asking you the questions, it's probably because we've instilled an environment where they're scared to make a mistake. And we need to try to work on that side of the culture to turn that around a little bit, because
Yeah,
again, we talk about retention. People will leave that type of environment, and the people that stay in that environment will never be superstars, because
good point.
they'll limit themselves, right? They're
Yeah,
they're
that's a real
they're
good point.
codependent people, and they need somebody to make those decisions for them. So the people that stay in a fear-based environment because they don't want to make the wrong decision are people that don't want to make decisions. And people that don't want to make decisions can't be superstars, because superstars don't just make decisions, they make the right ones at the right time. And the only way to do that is to give them the autonomy to be able to make those decisions, and they can't be making those decisions with fear of what's going to happen when they make it.
It's a good point. Wow, excellent, Matt. Thank you. Excellent, excellent points. All right, so here's some motivating tips for managers and shop owners. All right, and please, that little quote there on the left-hand side up above the shaking hands is, when respect is given, respect is reciprocated. So, and a leader, it's your job. You have to take the lead. That's what leadership. Take the lead on this. All right. You have to build strong relationships. I mentioned that earlier. Probably going to mention a few more times. Build strong relationships with your people. I'm not talking about going out with them to dinner or fishing or hunting. You know, that's not, I'm talking about a workplace relationship, strong relationships. Use praise and recognition often. Sometimes that means letting the little things slip. Find reasons to praise and recognize the behavior you want to see repeated. Find out the strengths of your employees and whatever you can do. In other words, if you find a technician who loves to do diagnostic work, all right, then give them the training, give them opportunities to do that work. You can improve upon a strength, not a weakness. So again, this is about retention. If you can find out the strengths of all your employees, what they love doing because they have some sort of propensity, it's talent toward that, then give them the opportunity to do that. I know it's not that easy to give them do that all the time, but whenever you can, if possible, give them the opportunity to play to their strengths. Give them positive performance feedback. Let them know. Matt mentioned earlier about the coach Nick Saban, and whenever you can, let them relive a positive, healthy experience. Then do that. Give them a reputation that they could live up to. Number one, into the future. Number two, right? Give them that positive feedback. And Matt said this earlier. We need to focus more on intrinsic, than extrinsic. Intrinsic is from the heart. All right. People do things when they do things from the heart, we need to really capitalize on that. That's the real value. That's the real reward. Focus on the work and not the reward. Real quickly, I'm going to talk about a 1960s. They did a study. This I forget the university, but they assembled a group of people, and they had these puzzles, these three-dimensional puzzles, and they got these people together, random people, and they said, "Well, you have 20 minutes to figure these puzzles out, three-dimensional puzzles, and then we're going to grade you and see how you did, see if you performed the job, the task of putting these three-dimensional puzzles." So at the end of 20 minutes, the observers graded them and says, okay, you did that wrong, this right, this wrong. And then they said, we're going to go out for about 10 minutes, record all this in our computer and come back. What they wanted to do is observe the people to see how they would react with the puzzles. And they found out that they weren't getting paid for this. There was no reward. But what they found out was that the people went back after the observers went out of the room. They went back to the puzzles and tried to rework them, try to do them better. Then they did another group of people where they said in the beginning, here are the three-dimensional puzzles. You're going to be rewarded. You're going to get paid to do this. We're going to grade you. If you do it correctly, we'll pay you. If you don't do it correctly, you don't get paid. So then they did the same thing. 20 minutes went by. They graded them. The ones that got rewarded, they paid them actual cash for these three-dimensional puzzles. Then they said, we're going to go out of the room. The observers went out of the room to record our findings. They wanted to see what happened. They found out that the group, most of them, didn't go back to the puzzles. Because once they got paid, it was one and done. It was over with. So again, the point of this is if we focus on the work and not just the reward, focus on what they're doing, how, in other words, make it the work itself, the quality, finding ways to praise them, finding those wins while they're doing the work, you're probably much better off in terms of motivation. And then obviously the last bullet point is ask what truly motivates. Sit down. We're going to do reviews in just a bit. One-on-one reviews. One of the biggest questions when I was in business, when I asked people, what do you love to do? What do you like doing? What motivates you? Why do you get up in the morning? You'd be surprised. We think people are only money motivated, and I hear this all the time. And like Matt said earlier, you do need a certain amount of money. We all do. We have to put food on the table. We got to provide for our families, provide for our futures. But when you talk about in terms of what truly motivates people, find out. Find out about that. You'd be surprised. But again, you're building that relationship. Matt, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this particular topic.
Yeah, I mean, I've got two things, and kind of both of them go back to what truly motivates you. At Elite, we have something that we call the Elite Dream Sheet that we ask our clients to fill out when they become members, and we actually made one of those same sheets for them to use with their employees because we've found it so impactful to be able to know what drives our clients and their business. And again, as a business owner, we think of ourselves as money motivated people because most of us started our business to be higher earners than what we could be as an employee, right? So I know for a long time I considered myself a money motivated individual. I was always striving to achieve more than what I achieved previously. And I have employees that feel the same way about themselves. And what I've learned over the years of internal reflection and then dealing with those employees is there's still a below the surface reason that that individual is money motivated, and that means more than the money. In other words, you're money motivated to fill some sort of void somewhere else, right? If we look at the psychology of why you're money motivated, so if you look at what truly motivates you, you're trying to achieve something to gain somebody's approval. You're trying to achieve something to gain something that you didn't have. You're trying to fill that, right? And so when you get to know those employees a little bit better, and you get to know those team members a little bit better, and you get to understand what really makes them tick, there's also things that once you understand that, because you're going to cap out at some point in time. If money is the only way you can motivate your team, at some point in time, even on a full commission pay plan, your capacity of your business can only grow so much. So that person is still going to cap out at some level. If you got a full flat rate technician and you're paying them the most competitive flat rate wage in the world, at some point in time, he can't produce so many more hours, right? He can't do two, if he gets to 120 hours, he can't do 150. If he gets to 150, at what point does he cap out? So somewhere the money is going to stop motivating, right? And money is a good short-term motivator. What you find is that if I give Joe a raise, about 6 weeks after I give him that raise, he's no longer
Adjust it.
appreciative of the raise. That's just his
Yeah,
expectation. That's his new life. He makes that amount of
right.
money. He's not appreciative of that anymore. So you have to go back to the deeper reasons that they feel like they are money motivated and try to tap into that psychology when you can, because most of it is about some level of recognition, that they're looking to get. And that dream sheet is a great thing. So the money buys them something. It buys them a vacation that they've always wanted to go on. It buys them the car that they've always wanted. It buys them a level of security because they grew up poor and they didn't have security as a kid. There's
Yeah,
something that money matters more so than a numeric value on the check that you hand across.
excellent, excellent, excellent points, Matt. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go through team reviews. I'm sorry, employee reviews, team meetings, and team huddles. So let's start with reviews. And we're going to go through this fairly quickly because this is a whole science within itself. But you're going to get a copy of these slides, and we're going to give you some resources too, by the way, to help you with this whole entire presentation today. So you'll get all that at the end of the probably within a day or so. You're going to get these slides and some downloads, some resources to help you with all what we're talking about. Anyway, employee review tips. These are formal reviews, by the way. Should be done every quarterly or semi-annually, twice a year or quarterly. We need to sit down with people. Check-ins and formal reviews are two different things. A regular check-in is just, Tommy, before we go back for lunch today, can we just grab 10 minutes? I want to go over a couple of things. That's a check-in. A formal review is a sit down, right? Sit down. So they're two different things. They accomplish two different tasks and two different criteria. There should never be any surprises at a review, by the way. You sit down with someone, if you're having those regular check-ins and everyone's giving their scorecard every week of how they're performing, if you're doing the right things as a shop owner or manager, letting them know their performance, when they win, reviewing comebacks, reviewing everything about them. There shouldn't be any surprises at an employee review. Reviews give an opportunity to live up to your commitments. So let's say you make a promise to a technician that if they complete all their ASEs, if they improve their productivity to a certain level, if they maintain their comebacks, or we like to call them rechecks, by the way, rechecks. It's more of a mindset when you say recheck. Keep it down to a minimum, all right? And then if the employee, the technician accomplishes all this criteria, all these goals, then that's a perfect time to live up to your commitment. Say, okay, you did all this. I promised you this is what you're going to get, that increase in pay, then that's what or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be tied to money, but whatever that commitment was, the perfect time to live up to that commitment. Reviews allow employees to stay in control of their own future. So when you sit down with an employee, a service advisor, and that's maybe struggling a little bit, the service advisor has only a year or two under their belt, and you assign training you assign, different techniques, phone skills, sales skills, handling objections, how to overcome pushback and we have this conversation, and the employee says, yeah, I can do all this. I want to do all this. Well, then just by saying that, they already have skin in the game. They already have this mental commitment. Once you say this and have this conversation in a review, they're more inclined to own up to it, to complete those tasks. But the mere fact that they're agreeing to it. Next bullet point is powerful. You have to find out what the goals of the individual are, right? The employee goals. Because when you can align the goals of the employee to the goals of the company, you have probably one of the most powerful strategies you'll ever have. So the employee understands that if I accomplish those, whatever it is, production goals, sales goals, whatever it is, whatever those goals are for the company, but the individual knows that if I accomplish those goals, I can accomplish my personal goals. That's one powerful motivator. one powerful strategy. And I always, in a review, allow the company to review you too, and the company. I'm sorry, allow the employee to review you and the company. So 50% of the review should be you speaking about the employee. And 25% of the time should be spent of the employee reviewing the company, and the other 25% should be the employee reviewing you or the manager. It's called the 50-25-25 rule. So this is it in a nutshell. It's a little bit more involved than that, but and if you want to reach out to us, we can give you a lot of documentation on this to help you with how to conduct an employee review. Very, very powerful. If you never speak to your employees, if you don't have sit downs with them and regular check-ins, again, we're talking about retention. We want to build strong, solid relationships that prevents them from looking over the fence for greener grass. Right, Matt?
Yeah, you're 100% right, Joe. And just to highlight, what you were talking about, the last part of that, as far as the allow the employee to review both company and you. What's really, I was talking with a client the other day, they were doing their employee reviews, and he implemented that last step right there where he asked each employee, is there anything that the company can do that would, you know, is there anything that we can change inside the company? If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing, what would it be? Which is kind of another way of asking that question, right? Um, and what was really powerful about that was every one of the employees maybe take one or two, gave him similar feedback that there was a manager that was on the team that should not be a part of the team, that he was driving a wedge between the culture of what the founder and owner had intended and how things were going when he wasn't there. And to go back to Darren's point originally, when he asked, what could you do? How could you tell if you have an employee that's, driving customers away or maybe not a good fit? The employee reviews right here, and this is a great step right here of just asking the other team members, right? And if you have true team members and you have a true defined culture, and you give your team authority and autonomy to tell you, and they trust you with the fact that if there's somebody that's not the right person on the bus, and they understand what that person looks like and doesn't look like, this is a great time for you to ask that question and get that feedback to be able to make sure you can get in there and make a change if you need to make a change.
Yeah, good points. Excellent. So do those employee reviews, schedule them. All right. Okay, so meeting tips. All right. If you're not having meetings now or they're not done on a regular basis, please, please, please have schedule them on a regular basis. All right. We're going to talk about huddles in a minute, but meetings are different from huddles, and we'll differentiate between that in just a minute. But employee meeting, a few tips. Make sure there's a planned agenda and set the day and time of the meetings. It should be continuous, whether it's weekly or twice a month or once a month. Just have these meetings. And meetings are not a time to reprimand or criticize the group or criticize an individual. Hold that for another time. That's better off when you have those check-ins with people. Don't use a meeting to reprimand or criticize. You need to celebrate wins. You need to spotlight individuals and team accomplishments. Again, we're hopping on this win theory, this win principle, this strategy, but it's important. The more that people can win, the better they feel about themselves, the more they're going to grow, the more they're going to produce, the more that helps everyone. All right. During the teams, you need to promote a couple of things, 4 basic things. All right. Because you really want team engagement and continuous improvement. That is a theme of every business should adhere to, that continuous improvement strategy. So during the meeting, you're going to talk about current challenges, customer issues, what's working, what's not. And what is working, you want to do more of. What's not working, sometimes you got to dismiss it. So maybe it shouldn't be done anymore. How can we improve the employee experience and the customer experience? And then obviously, how can we improve efficiency and productivity? And these questions or these topics should be part of meetings, these continuous meetings. And you want the engagement, you want the input from people around you. Like I said earlier, your people live in the trenches. They know what's going on. If you hire the right people, which by now I'm sure you understand that you should be hiring the right people. Once you have them, utilize them, take care of them, utilize them. They're going to give you a lot of good feedback. And anything that's suggested by an employee, a team member that has any any credibility to it, get back to that, right? Just don't let it fall by the wayside. You're not going to be able to act on everything they say, but I want you to get back to everyone. Because what you don't want to happen is to fall on deaf ears, and then they're going to stop making suggestions. They're going to stop giving you feedback. So when they give you feedback, please take it as critical feedback that's important. It's important because they said it. It's important to them. If you don't act on it, and if you don't make it a big deal, they're going to stop giving you the feedback, and that's what you don't want. A team meeting is not a monologue. Employer reviews, not a monologue. It's engagement. It's getting everybody together for a common cause. Matt, what do you think? Anything to add?
And I think the important part of the last part of what you just said there, Joe, because we want to be very honest about this and say not all the feedback that you get is going to be good feedback. Not all the suggestions that you get are going to be good suggestions.
No,
You're going to
no.
get some stuff that's pretty stupid from time to time, and that's that's just being honest about it, right? But
And I've gotten that.
if but if you shut it down like Joe says, and you say, listen, that's stupid, we're not doing that because blah blah blah, you might be 100% right, but what you've done is you've killed the motivation for that person to want to provide feedback at some other time.
And
And
everybody else too in the room, right?
that
Everybody else,
never,
yeah.
yeah, you showed everybody else in the room that we really don't value feedback. We only want the feedback that we want to hear. And if you if you create an environment that you only get the feedback that you want to hear, we talk about it a lot, about the echo chambers, that exist inside of social media now. We're being fed our own ideas back to us based off the algorithms, which is why, everybody's ideas are so polarizing now. And so I think we've taken a lot of that and we put it inside of our business. We just don't like hearing stuff we don't like to hear anymore. If it's not 100% in line with what we like to hear, then we've trained ourselves over the last 20 years of this social media experiment to reject anything that's not 100% in line with what we think and how we feel in the moment. So just understand, go into it knowing that you're 100% going to get feedback that you don't want to hear, and you're going to get some suggestions that are not good suggestions, and that's still okay.
Excellent.
Like Joe said, just acknowledge the feedback, acknowledge the suggestion, acknowledge the fact that, hey, that's something that we'll have to take a look at, and we'll have to get back to you on what we could do there, but it's a good suggestion. If anybody has anything better, and you just try to open the floor up that way. But and you're not, also understand that when you have these meetings, when you start off, people are non-confrontational, and so they're going to start off very quiet, right? You're going to have these first few meetings, and you're going to start off with a group of people that just kind of sits there and stares at you, and you're going to ask them if they have any feedback, and they're going to say no. Eventually, you're going to have a day
Yeah.
where somebody provides feedback. And
Yeah.
if we handle it the right way, like Joe just talked about, then we're going to promote that feedback in the future and from other people. But if we finally get if we finally have that interaction one day and we smack them down because it was
Right.
stupid, in our opinion, then you're going to be right back to silent meetings with nobody talking.
Yeah, and to your point, Matt, which is a great point, don't get discouraged if no one speaks in the first meeting or once you implement this strategy. Don't get discouraged. Just keep going, keep going. What you can do too is before a meeting, when you do your walk management by walking around, and if someone brings up something about, boss, I think we need a new tire machine. Really? Okay, hold on. Having a meeting on Friday, bring that up at the meeting. So that'll start the conversation, but don't get discouraged. Keep at it, keep at it. In time, you will see. I promise you, if you keep this strategy up, they will eventually start giving you some feedback.
Yep.
All right, daily huddles, which is different from a meeting. It's a type of meeting, but it's not really a full-blown meeting. It's a very, very short meeting. Real quick, man, tell us what the win to 10 means.
Yeah, so when
That's
it's,
you.
if you guys, if your shop is anything like my shop, pretty much everything after 10 o'clock in the morning the day is kind of running itself. In other words, you have customers that are coming in to pre-drop their pre-scheduled appointments off first thing in the morning. You have rollover work from the day before. Um, our morning huddle is a way for us to plan, to put a strategy together so we can win to 10. Because if we can control the schedule and we can control the workflow up to 10 o'clock in the morning, then we have a pretty strong opportunity to win that day. If we just take everything and say, well, it's first come, it just is what it is, and it happens when it happens, and it happens how it happens, then the day can get, after 10 a.m., the day can get past you pretty quick. And so, it's not our saying, but we love the saying, a failure to plan is planning to fail.
Exactly.
So that team huddle in the morning is a really good way to try to get everybody on the same page for what the plan is every day. And the plan changes. It's not the same plan every single day. All right. The core basis of what we do is the same, but every day is a little bit different, right? If I have 27 hours of pre-sold work already sitting in the bay, then my day's a little bit different than if I have 2 hours of pre-sold work sitting there for the day. So everybody needs to understand that, hey, we got 2 hours of pre-sold work. This is we're in doing the slow day policy. We're going to hop on the phone. We're going to do outbound calls. In the shop, we're doing some projects, whatever we're doing. Or, hey guys, we're slammed today. We got technicians, I need you guys to do quick turnovers today. We need to have some speed to point A to point B to get there as quickly as we can. Service advisors, this is our strategy, for incoming phone calls and how we're going to handle new appointments. Got to try to get all of those things together to make sure everybody's aligned, make sure we have clear communication for what the plan is for the day. And then we also want to have an opportunity to, again, celebrate those wins, bring some of those culture things to the forefront, and get everybody started off into the day in the right mind frame.
Yeah. I think you covered the whole page, man. Thank you. Very good. Excellent. Yes, you think of a team. One more thing I want to add to this is Matt covered the whole entire page, but football, what do? After every play, they huddle. They huddle. So, and that is to get everybody realigned and make sure that they know everybody's on the same page. So not doing huddles now, please do huddles. Use this format. It's an excellent format. Thank you, Matt, for outlining that. Okay, we're going to hop into employee development. It's very, very important. Accountability. So when you get a bunch of shop owners in the room, they start complaining about their worst employee or the problems they had or situation about an employee. My technician doesn't do this. My service advisor fails to do the call delivery process properly. Whatever it is, the manager does not provide that one-on-one like I asked him to do. Whatever it is, but before you hold people accountable and go to the next step of whatever that is reprimand or whatever, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. All right, again. A leader looks within first, all right? Inward. You look inward first to make sure. You ask, have I hired the right person? Again, we go back to what we said 3 or 4 times. Everything starts and begins with the right people. Without the right people, nothing we're talking about today, last week, or the next 2 weeks matters. It really doesn't. Have I committed to understanding the individual? Am I really reaching out to understand the needs of the individual? Have I provided the right training, the required training for that position? Have I communicated clearly the goals and expectations of the position? Have I monitored performance and given enough continuous constructive feedback? Have I recognized their wins and performance results? And lastly, the most important, have I developed strong relationships founded on mutual respect? So this I want you to take to the bank. This one slide here is very, very important. If you're complaining about an individual, I'm not saying the individual is right or wrong. I'm saying before you point to the individual and say that person is not performing, I have to do something about it. Make sure that you, the leader, the manager, the shop owner, have done all these things. Because you have to ask yourself and be very, very honest with yourself. Because sometimes the problem is not the individual. Sometimes the problem is us. We're not doing our jobs properly. So please, it's a very, very important slide. Good, Matt?
Yes, I mean, just, we're talking about retention here, and I think that this is so important because if you don't take the opportunity, like you said, to take responsibility for your role inside of this, inside of holding other people accountable, and we give somebody a job description, we tell them and don't train them, right? I told him 1,000 times he just can't get it. But did we train him once? And if you told him 1,000 times and never trained him once, then there's no, how do you hold them accountable for doing it? Because you don't know whether they can do it or not, right? So what problem with that is we get rid of that individual and we go hire somebody else, but we didn't fix the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is we didn't
Yeah,
train them, and that's where we see this turnover cycle, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
anytime you have somebody that's not living up to, the expectations that you have, this is a great framework for you to go through. And if you follow this framework and it still doesn't work out, that's okay. It might take
Okay,
you might hold on to that employee a week or two longer than you should. But what you'll do is you'll identify the fact that all of your systems and processes are in place before you get rid of them and bring the new person to put them in place.
right,
Because if
right.
you fire too fast, off of the assumption that this is just not the right person, and we're talking about performance based, not culture based. Somebody's their own culture, get them out as quickly as you can get them out.
That's different. That's
But
different.
if it's a performance issue, make sure that you set them up for success because it might actually be your fault, right? And then you hire the next person and you have the same problem, and then it takes you 4 or 5 bad hires for you to really sit down and self reflect on, man, is this, how did I hire 5 people that couldn't do this, that I
Right.
said were qualified people to hire them, and all 5 of them failed. If you got 5 people that have failed that were qualified applicants on the front end, you probably have a you problem.
What exactly? What happened? Right. Excellent. Excellent point, man. All right. So developing your superstars. It all begins with hiring the right people. Again, it's not a typo. It's there because it really begins and ends with the right people. It's easy to bring out what's left in than put in that was left out. And what that means is just slide over to the photo of the on the right hand side, the scorpion and the frog. I'll tell you a real quick story. Real quick story. Scorpion and the frog. I love this story. I tell it at every Fly with the Eagles boot camp that we do. Frog is the frog is swimming in the river, and there's a scorpion on the riverbank. Scorpion wants to get to the other side. Scorpion can't swim. So the scorpion says to the frog, "Please, if I jump on your back and you take me to the other side of the river." Well, the frog says, "Why would I do that? You're a scorpion. Once you jump on my back, you'll sting me. I'll die." Scorpion says to the frog, "But if I sting you, I can't swim. You'll die, but I'll die." Frog says, "That makes sense." So the scorpion jumps on the frog's back. They go across the river. Halfway across the river, and we know what happens. Scorpion stings the frog. Frog is paralyzed, dying. And the frog looks up at the scorpion and says, "Why did you do that?" His scorpion looks back at the frog and says, "It's who I am. I'm a scorpion. It's what I do." So sometimes, no matter what you do, like Matt said earlier, no matter what you do, you can't change that person. And if it's a cultural problem, if it's something that's really toxic within that person, you got to let them go right away. You can't hesitate. But if you ask yourself those questions you had before, and it's not a cultural problem, just make sure you look inward first. But sometimes people are scorpions. You have to look for attitude, aptitude, and ethics. Please, please, please identify talents, work on skill developments. All right. With the right talent, with the right attitude, aptitude, and ethics, then you can develop those skills within those people. But it all starts with that. Don't look for someone right out of the gate to be that high producer for you. Look for the right attitude. I've hired many people in my life that were good producers, but were toxic. Their numbers were very high, but the rest of the shop went down. They actually were so toxic. They were heavy producers. And we looked, he's my best producer. Yeah, but what happened to the other ones? What happened to the other technicians? Their production went down because something is wrong within the environment. So please, please, please make sure you don't have scorpions in your midst. Communicate often to the others, all right? Before you show strength, you have to develop trust. You can't command people or tell people things should be done this way, set those expectations without developing trust. Trust comes from understanding the individual. All back to leadership. You have to understand and communicate the opportunities for everyone. WIIFM. It's not a radio station. It's what's in it for me, right? Everyone. That's not being selfish, by the way. That's being understanding of everyone's innate requirements for whatever they want to do. It's important that we understand that. Again, this goes back to what I said earlier. Everyone needs to be developed properly, and you must make that commitment as a leader to everyone's developments. Let everyone know how you're going to monitor and measure that, their performance. Let them know how you're going to coach them too. And above all, promote what we call believe in, not buy in. You don't want people blindly complying to what you think should be done your way. All right? Communicate the why, explain to them, build relationships, have them believe in you. They can't, because if they don't believe in the messenger, they're not going to believe the message that you put forth. So please, 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 I want you to not buy in as your concept, but believe in. Matt, anything to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the last part you said there, believe in versus buy in. And I mean, it's really important to get everybody to believe in what what the mission, what the vision of the business is. And then understand that, if you have superstars, they want a purpose and they want to be a part of something, and they're not easily, you know, they're not easily tricked into that, right? In
Yeah,
other words,
you're right.
you gotta work to get them to believe in those things because they have strong core beliefs in themselves as well. So you're not just going to have one conversation and everybody roll over and
It's true.
believe in exactly. It's the consistency of the message, and it's the action behind the words, right? The actions have to
Yep,
match the words to start making them believe in and to get that engagement out of you. So
right.
if you're pumping, if you hang the posters up all over the wall and you're talking about ethics and you're talking about doing the right thing and you're talking about all these things that are supposed to matter to you, but they see things that aren't in line with that,
Right.
you're not going to get that believe in that you're looking for.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to run through the next two slides a little bit quickly because these things we've been going over a little bit. I just want to reinforce a little bit about how do you monitor and measure, all right, performances. Plus, the next 2 weeks, we're going to go into this a little bit deeper. So, but this is a good preliminary, a good foundation for the next 2 weeks. Technicians, obviously, you want to make sure that they performing their workflow processes correctly, all right, their multi-points. Make sure they're organized, monitor their training and skill development, build hours of productivity. All right, it's very, very important. Everyone must know the score of the game. Every technician must know how they're doing in terms of productivity. And obviously, you want to track any warranty claims and quality, what we call recheck. So we don't like to use the word comebacks. We like to use the word recheck. And you want to make sure that you're monitoring their team mindset development. There's nothing more important than the team. All right. The team comes first. It's like a family. All right. If we say family comes first, or environment and work environment, it is definitely the team environment. For advisors and management, very similar. Training and personal development. Again, we went to this early, and we're going to go deeper next week and the week after about what these criteria, what it means, and how to dig deeper into them. For service advisors in particular, sales, leads, customer acquisition, and retention. These are all KPIs, key performance indicators that you as a shop owner manager must monitor those positions. Communication skills, phone skills, people skills, customer satisfaction scores, very, very important, and customer feedback. Nothing's more important in this particular situation than the customer and their feedback. All right, so autonomy. What you want to do is create a workplace that really can run without you, the shop owner. Or if you're a company manager, if you're or a store manager, run without you. I'm not saying you need to be an absentee owner, but you need to build systems, you need to build people, develop people, processes that is something what to happen. If you would need to take off for a month or two, could your business survive? Again, I'm not promoting absentee ownership, but if you're going to scale your company, build for the future, you need to build autonomy into the workplace. And that means developing a team of superstars. All right. We're almost down to the wire, right, Matt? So the rules of managing people. All great leaders know how to bring out the best in people, right? We talked about that again and again. You, as a leader, need to develop them to bring out the best in them. Employees can't leave their personal problems on the doorstep. That technician, that service supervisor that has a sick child at home, can you really expect them to shut it off when they cross your threshold? No. Be aware of that. And you're hoping that you've built a relationship so strong that they come tell you, says, look, I may be waiting for a phone call today because my child is sick and my wife is taking her to the doctors to see what's going on. Whatever that is. So please, the personal problems, they can't leave on the doorstep. Be direct in your feedback. Don't dance around the issue. This is Matt's bullet point. So talk about this, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, we see it a lot, where as leaders, we at the beginning of our leadership journey, or maybe you've never really focused on your leadership skills, we try to dance around an issue with somebody, right? And you have to learn to be direct with your feedback and tell people exactly what you want them to know. That doesn't mean that you have to be rude. That doesn't mean that you have to be aggressive, but it does mean that you need to say exactly what you mean and make sure that they understand exactly what you hoped, that they how you feel and what you think about the situation or them as an individual or their performance. So, but I mean, we see it a lot of times where people just dance around an issue and we never really get the elephant out in the room and we never address it head on. You got to learn to be direct, share your feedback directly. I learned that a long time ago from my dad. He's a very direct individual, and I thought he was abrasive, and when he retired and I took the business over, there was a vendor that came back, and I was talking to the vendor. I was like, "Man, I bet you're glad you get to deal with me from now on instead of dad." And he said, you're dealing with your dad wasn't always easy. He's like, but I really enjoyed it because I knew exactly where I stood all the
There
time.
you go. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if he wasn't happy, he told me he wasn't happy and he gave me an opportunity to fix it. And Darren, your Jasper rep, I'm sure he would agree with me. He wants to know if you're unhappy about something, he wants to know so he can fix it. And if you have good employees, they want to know if they're not making you happy so they can fix it for you. What happens a lot of time is we just dance around it and dance around it, dance around it, and
Yeah.
then they never know, and then we tell them what a crappy job they did at the end when we go to fire them, and they're like, man, if you had just told me, I could have done something about it, right? So learn how to be really direct in your feedback.
Yeah. Excellent. 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 All right. Next slide. Same topic, rules of managing people. Catch people doing things right. All right. I went through this earlier. We always look for reasons to catch people doing things wrong. Now, this terminology came from another book I'm going to mention. It's called The Manager, written probably almost 40 years ago by now by Ken Blanchard. It's a short book with big font, and I recommend still reading that book. But look for reasons to catch people doing things right. If you want them to repeat that behavior over and over again, but it doesn't make any sense to only direct your attention to them when something happens, something goes wrong. So please catch people doing things right. Invest your time in your best people. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. You get a group of shop owners together. What are they discussing? This technician did that. That service supervisor, this manager, this employee. Invest your time. You spent a lot of energy, money. You invested your time in hiring these people. All right. That was last week. We talked about this. Now that you have them, please, that is your role as a leader. Invest your time in them. You're going to get rewards back like you won't believe. And remember, public praise, we all know this, public praise with permission and private criticism, right? Public praise and private criticism. Not doing things your way may be fine. If you've done your job, all right, and you've done your job correctly, you hired the right people, you're developing them, and they want to do things that's not perfectly aligned with you or do it your way, that's fine. Let them expand, let them spread their wings, let them do it because guess what? There are many, many different ways to do things. You want to travel on the road, you want to go from New York to Philadelphia, there's 10 different ways to get there. Is one way the only way? Maybe not. So not doing things your way may be fine. Never compromise your words, your standards, your ethics. Never, never, never. Always put ethics first. If you got to come up with a tough decision, a real tough decision, always go back to your core values, your core principles. That will be your guiding light. You'll make the right decision. You can't go wrong by always making sure that you align yourself with your ethics and your standards and your integrity. Correct the behavior, not the person. All right. We sometimes attack the person when we should be focusing on the behavior. So someone did something. Well, what happened? Is it a training issue? Maybe they were just off that day for some reason. Maybe something's going on at home. But always look at the behavior, not the person. It's very, very important. And the last one I love, and it's Matt, right? Matt, go to the head of the snake. What does that mean? Go to the head of the snake.
Yes, I mean, I see a lot of people out there that have employee or coworker mindset. And you think about, when you were an employee at some point in time and you had a problem with Joe, we would sit around the water cooler when Joe wasn't there and everybody would complain about Joe, right? Well, now you're the leader of the shop, you're the owner or you're the manager, and we carry that same mentality, right? We have a problem with Joe, and instead of going directly to Joe, we get around the rest of the team and we talk about things that Joe's not doing right. Or, Joe had a blow up this morning, and instead of going directly to Joe and asking Joe, hey, what happened? Talk to me about it. We go talk to everybody else. Hey, what was the deal with Joe this morning? What was the deal with, that big blow up? Why did he do that? I don't understand why he acts like that. Man, Joe's got a real bad attitude, doesn't he? And now what we've done is we've cut Joe off at the knees with everybody else in the shop. And you know, the other thing that we've done is that we don't realize, and it's unintentional and it's subliminal, but the person that we're talking to starts to wonder, I wonder what he says about me when I'm not here too,
There you
right?
go.
And
Excellent point.
so it's terrible leadership, when we do that, when we go around the problem, don't dance around the problem, go straight to the head of the snake. If I got a problem with Joe, go straight to Joe, meet with Joe, figure out what the problem is, come up with a solution. But
Excellent.
again, don't go to other members on the team and try to loop them into the a problem that doesn't involve them.
Excellent. Excellent. I love that. I love that. I love that expression. All right. So never forget your most valuable skills as a leader, as a shop owner, will always be your people skills. That's it. It's all about people, developing people. That is employee management. All right. So here's some next steps. When you go back to your shops, create your culture standards. Very, very important. If you haven't done it already or you need to revisit it, make sure you have a really lengthy, detailed onboarding process. Go back if you haven't done it in a while or you've never done it. Start scheduling those employee quarterly reviews. Please, it's important. Remember, you want to build relationships. One of the best ways to build relationships is to sit down with your people and discuss. All right, just really open yourself up, let them open themselves up, and have those employee reviews. Use praise and recognition to motivate people. Praise, and you'd be surprised what that'll do. Recognize people. Make sure that they feel important, that they know that you appreciate what they do, that the work that they do for your company really matters. And make management by walking around and Gemba part of your role as a leadership. You'd be surprised what you can find out from the people that work in the trenches each and every day. Okay, if you have any questions, Matt, anything?
No, I think we've answered all the questions that are in the chat today. I do appreciate everybody that's
Okay.
participated, and um, just like to say that, if you guys are going and you're working on those action items afterwards and you need some assistance, please feel free to reach out to me and Joe. We'll give you
Mhm.
our contact information here in just a little bit, but we'd be
Yep.
happy to help you out with these things any way we can.
Yeah. Just give me 2 more minutes, everybody. I'm going to just go through these slides. Ignite is our conference in January, January 30th, 31st. There is a sale going on right now, $50 off. Ticket price, it's a flash sale. It actually ends tomorrow night at 12 midnight. So please, 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 if you're interested in going, we're going to have breakout groups, guest speakers, a lot of good training. You will not regret it. It's in Phoenix. I'm sorry, Scottsdale, Arizona. So please, 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 interested, sign up, use the code birthday, and then you'll redeem your savings. Fly with the Eagles, real quick. I'm going to mention this every week, but it's important. It's what Matt and I do with another one of our teammates, Tom, and we do a 3-day boot camp. The next one's going to be in February 19th, 21st in the Long Beach area, Los Angeles area. We haven't picked the actual hotel, but you can sign up for it already. The price is $17.95. Early bird special is $6.99. But for Jasper, price $3.99. If you are interested, please, 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 you can go to the website and sign up. Use that code Elite 300. Jasper Co-op eligible. All right. So please, it's a no-brainer. I guarantee you. I've been doing the Eagles class as a presenter for probably 8, 9 years now. And I've been to many, many Eagles before that as an attendee. So it is one of the most important things you can do to jumpstart your business. Use the QR code if you want, or just jump to the website. Sign up. You will not regret it. And real quick, we do Top Shop coaching, which is one-on-one coaching, service advisor training, pro service, which is a peer group concept. If you're interested, just to talk in anything that we talked about here or today, you have a problem, an issue, no pressure. Talk to us. We talk to a lot of shop owners. All right. We consult with them. We're not asking you to sign up for anything. We know that if we do our job correctly, you will consider us, whether it's now or into the future. But if you have a problem, an issue, you want to talk to me, Tom, Matt, please just take that QR code, schedule a call, no pressure. All right. And obviously, there is my information on the right-hand side lower. There's Matt's email. If you have anything, a question, something you want to run by us, whatever, please just just contact us. Again, we're not going to beat your door down to do anything that you're not comfortable with. We know, like I said earlier, we do our job, you're going to consider us. Okay, we are done. We are actually done. Thank you, everyone. I hope this was informative, enlightening, and I look forward to next week. Pay plans. So this has really been great so far, the first 2 weeks. I want to thank Jasper again. Thank Matt. Matt, you've been great. The content that you added was incredible. Thank you so much. And then we'll see you next week. Matt, any last words? Anything?
Yeah, just thank you everybody for your time. We've enjoyed it again, and Joe, appreciate you for your help, and Jasper and Darren, especially, we want to thank you guys for your cooperation in helping us put this together.
Thank you. Have a great day and a great weekend. All right. Take care. Bye now.